Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. We're out here today at my favorite off-road area and we're testing finally the 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor, the super Ford performance off-road vehicle that, well, I've been waiting to test drive for a great deal of time. I really want to see what it can do out here because now it's lighter and it has a lot more horsepower. So let's get to it. Before we get out and start going up that rock wall right behind me over here, we're going to talk about styling just a little bit because this is very unique from the standard F-150. A completely different front end. And as you can see here, it's really butch, man. This thing's got muscles, it's buff, and it all starts with wider fenders and a wider track, a 6-inch wider track, and those fenders go along with it. Unique fenders. You have a unique hood up here with air extractor vents, and it's got different sculpting. The grille, of course, is different. We've got LED marker lights in that grille. The lower bumper's different, and you can see through here, we've actually got a nice big opening there, so you can actually see the suspension through there. And that lower fascia down there, completely different. Actually, it's not really even a fascia. There's skid plates down there and big hooks. This is an off-road vehicle, and as you can see down there, the chassis, this has got a completely different chassis, different frame than the standard F-150. You've got big, thick, 3-inch Fox shocks down there, big, thick ones. They really work well, and we'll get to that here in the handling. But it really is a good-looking truck. It's completely different, but oddly enough, even though it's completely brand new, it looks very similar to the old Raptor. Definitely has those familial traits here in the styling. As we come around the corner here, another LED light, but these wheels. Now this comes standard with different off-road wheels. This actually has the optional beadlock capable forged alloy wheels. About a $1,200 option here. I think they're pretty good looking and they go with these nice big BF Goodrich off-road tires quite well. As we come around the corner here and start coming down the side, you can see these bulging front fenders also have vents in the side of them. Those are actually functional vents. Down here, this also has some very rugged aluminum running boards that you can actually step on. They're grippy. You don't have to worry about slipping off. And here we do have the extended cab. You can get the crew cab as well, but that does have a longer wheelbase. So as you can see here, this actually has a nice short wheelbase in this particular model. Now the Raptor graphics, this is something we got to talk about because you'd assume this would be part of the package. You're spending up for the Raptor, but no, another $1,100 to get these Raptor stickers here on the rear fenders, and that's not all. Coming further around the back here, we can see this beautiful Ford piece of trim back here. It's a nice applicator. It says Raptor, Ford in big block letters, and Raptor style. It's an option. Can you believe it? It looks like it belongs here. It looks very natural here on the Raptor, but it's a $500 option all by itself. Without it, you've got a decal. That one's standard, unlike the ones on the side here. But all kidding aside, the rear end of this truck very much unique from the standard F-150. Where those stickers are there on the side, those are wider rear quarters. And the rear bumper here, you'll notice these big, huge dual exhausts. These are massive, and they do make a lot of sound. And we'll get to that a little bit later when we're talking about the driving and the power aspect of things because, well, sound's a topic. All right, my friends, this is what we're here for. This is the Butcher Jones Recreation Area just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, and we're going to go up what I call Butcher Hill. It's a nice course that I like to take some of the more heavy-duty, real off-road vehicles on. And so to start with right here, the Raptor has sort of a new transfer case for this new model. It's a hybrid between a real transfer case where you can have locked four-wheel drive high and low, as well as you can have all-wheel drive, which is more like you find in an SUV, where it can actually divvy up the power front to rear a little bit more fluidly. This particular course that we're going to go through right here does require real four-wheel drive and low. So there's a couple ways to do that here. There's the knob here and you can switch it down to 4 low, but this also has a terrain management system here that's got the new computerized programmed approach, and it'll do the same thing as the knob there, but it'll also dial in a few extra little metrics. So I'm going to go down here on the steering wheel and I'm going to go through the modes here. First one is going to be Sport. Sport, that's really more for on-road driving, give you more throttle response, has to do with the the steering. The next is weather mode. Now weather mode, that's where you're going to get the all-wheel drive. As you can see right here on the dash, 4A is lit up. That's the automatic all-wheel drive. Now as I go down the modes here, we've got mud and sand. Now the first thing that happens when you do that is you go into 4 high. Also the rear diff is locked here. I'm going to go one more mode. There's Baja. The rear diff is unlocked, and that changes the throttle map just a little bit because that's expecting you to go a higher speed, but we're still in 4 high. The mode we're going to use here is rock and crawl. So I need to put this in neutral so that it can go into 4 low, and it's shifting right now there. Now we're in 4 low, and it's turned off all traction control, all the nannies, everything's off here. And so here we go. We're going to go up this hill. Now one thing you'll note is that the throttle mapping on 4 low in this particular mode is very, very mild. And so you can really roll into that throttle, and this thing just crawls nice and easy. It's nice and low with a low range. Going straight up the steep rock face right here. All right. This is not super challenging, but it can be technical if you haven't done it very much. And because of the extra clearance this thing has, and because the locker's on back there, I'm not getting any slippage that I might get in some of these spots. Now, this has been pretty mild. There's another spot we're going to get to up here that tends to get a little bit more, well, kneading, because you've got some areas where the articulation with the suspension gets such that sometimes one of those rear wheels wants to be off the ground. But it's very maneuverable. The steering gets very light in this mode so that you can really maneuver the vehicle without having to put too much effort in. And these big tires, these BF Goodrich KO2 tires, have really good grip over these rocks and a lot of this loose sand and soil. And going over some of these moguls here where you really need a lot of articulation, this 13.9 inch and 13 inch suspension travel that this has front and rear is really just exactly what the doctor ordered, because I've driven other vehicles up this hill that were very capable off-road, but on occasion I'd hit those jounce bumpers when I'd get to spots where I need that articulation, and I haven't done that here just yet. And you notice this powertrain just sort of completely unobtrusive. You don't really even know it's down there working away because it's not requiring me to tip in and really throw throttle at it. It's just idling up this hill effortlessly. The steering's got a good feel over these rocks. I can kind of feel the terrain relatively decent through the steering, which is unusual in a vehicle with electric steering. But like I say, the nice thing about it is the drive modes allows you to tailor the feel of it so that you can actually get a light or heavy feel. Going through a little tight spot right here. Articulation really king in this particular spot. Up we go. Now the ride over this stuff, obviously, it's very compliant ride here with the Raptor. These Fox shocks do an amazing job of keeping those wheels planted on the rocks and giving us the grip we need. It doesn't beat you to death at all. It's a nice, soft, marshmallowy ride. That was quite easy going up this hill. Now, again, this isn't super technical, but for most street vehicles that come off a showroom floor, this can be quite a challenge. This isn't something that I would do in most crossover SUVs. Hold for maybe a couple of Jeeps. Maybe when the new Bronco comes out, if they have a good off-road version, this might be a good spot to bring it to. All right, now we are to the top of that rock crawl. So we don't need to have this thing in ultra crazy mode anymore. So I'm going to put it in neutral here, and I'm just going to dial it down to two-wheel drive. In fact, here, the rest of this trail till we get to the mud and sand section does not really require anything special. So I'm going to put it down in normal for the time being. 4x4 is shift in progress. Going to put it back in drive. Now, this next section of the trail is really about getting some speed on and really getting an idea how this chassis is bolted together as well as the structure here. This is a little bit rougher than, say, the Washboard Road where I test a lot of vehicles, but it still requires some pretty good maneuverability and a good suspension with a lot of forgiveness, quite frankly, because it's still got some ruts and rocks and bumps. Whew. And this is kind of fun. You can really kind of roll along here at a decent clip without feeling like you're going to break it. Now, one thing I will point out here is this is the extended cab, not the crew cab. And so what that means is here I've got clamshell doors, one big opening. So the structure here isn't quite as tight and solid as you're going to have with a crew cab. So if you're somebody who doesn't like to feel your vehicle flexing around you, if you don't like to feel and hear your doors flexing and shuddering within their frames, you should probably get the crew cab, because honestly, this thing's pretty loose, because the crew cab's got that extra vertical member between the two doors, makes it feel a lot more solid and tight. Granted, that forces you into a longer wheelbase in this truck. The short wheelbase really makes it better for getting out here and having the maneuverability. But as far as the overall ride and how well bolted together this thing is, I'm pretty impressed, given the fact that we're rolling along this rocky, rough trail at a pretty good clip. Having turned around and going down the hill here now, this hill is actually pretty cool because it's got some really big moguls down here as we get towards the bottom that give us a good idea of how this thing handles the really deep ruts and moguls. Does it throw you around? Does it beat you to death? And you know, actually, this isn't too bad at all. And again, this goes to its articulation. That's just really, really good. Now, the next part of the trail here, we're getting into sand and mud, and that's why I like bringing vehicles up here so much, because you've got really 3 different areas here when it's dry, at least. Well, if it's wet, then you get mud. But here, first we had the rock crawl, then we had the trail. Here we've got deep sand. It's sort of like dunes out here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come over here, get back out of 2-wheel drive, and I'm going to go up to mud and sand. It's putting it in 4 high, and it has locked the rear differential because you want that in the sand. And you might notice here on the screen, it's also lit up my front camera, just like it did when I was rock crawl mode. And that lets you see what's in front. So if it's really, really hairy stuff, you've got that front view right in front of your bumper there, and that's the bumper right there at the bottom of the screen, so you can see exactly where you are in relation to obstacles and things like that. So off we go now into the sand here. This is actually a dry riverbed. Depending on what time of year you come through here, this can actually be a not dry riverbed. But this is pretty cool because we've got some nice high banks here as we get down in here into the actual deep sand. Whew. This is fun, man. This is what you buy this truck for. If you just want an off-road vehicle you can go play with sometimes, get an F-150 FX4. But if you really want to be able to do all things, and you do them fast, this is what it's about. Fact of the matter is, 99.9% of all off-road vehicle buyers really spend most of their time on the pavement. That's just a fact of life. Those are real statistics. Now granted, people that buy this truck may spend more of their time off-road than most, but you still have to drive on the pavement everyday life. You have to drive on the pavement to get to that off-road park or wherever it is that you spend your time in the dirt. So how does it drive out here? Well, first thing I can tell you out here on this windy highway is the fact that you know you're in an off-road vehicle. It has that sort of soft, marshmallowy feel, steering not quite as sharp as it might be in a street truck, and it has a nice soft sort of floaty ride when you get up to speed. You do pay a price a little bit out here on the highway, so chassis gets 4 out of 5 stars. Now powertrain, normally this is the first thing we get into when we do our test drive, but we wanted to get out there and really off-road first. So this engine is very special for this truck. It's unique to the Raptor, a high output version of Ford's 3.5 liter EcoBoost V6. Same engine you're going to find in the regular F-150, but it's got a few tweaks. It's got a few additional things that net it more horsepower. Here we've got 450 horsepower, 510 pound-feet of torque, and it comes exclusively with this 10-speed automatic transmission. Paddle shifters here, sport mode here. We've got a number of things that really allow you to tap that power. Now, of course, many people might be asking the question, with all this horsepower, all this torque, this 10-speed automatic, how does it go? Woo! Oh, almost took my hat off, man. Woo! This thing's got some power. Power. You can hear it. Listen to that. This has got a great sound. And I am speeding. Wow, that was like 100 miles an hour. Eek! In a truck. a big off-road truck. That's kind of scary if you think about it. All right, calm down, get back to legal speeds. So lots of power, a lot of great sound here. Now there is a caveat to that because it really sounds good inside where that's piped in. It almost sounds like a V8, but outside, back there, those dual exhausts, it sounds like a freaking weed eater. It sounds like a dirt bike. It sounds like a really souped up Toyota Tacoma V6 because you know, it's a V6, not a V8. So for a lot of folks out there standing on the outside at the curb, the sound coming out of this thing doesn't necessarily match with the truck. It doesn't look like it should sound like that. So there's that. But inside, it sounds awesome. It's great. Transmission works really good, power delivery really good. These paddle shifters, I didn't use them right there, but they do work reasonably well. We've got this big giant truck, we've got all this horsepower, a whole lot more than the old Raptor had. What are we talking about with fuel economy? Well, this is rated at 16 mpg combined. Not bad at all. 15 city, a little bit more than that highway. In my week with this, I actually achieved 15 mpg. Not bad at all. Now, one of the ways that gets to that is the auto start-stop system, which sucks. Hated it. Now, you can turn it off, but I always test these with these systems so I can tell how they work. And it sucks. It's just the most miserable thing you ever. Just the engine stops, it starts, it stops, it starts. It's annoying. Not very refined. It really makes the whole truck shudder. This engine just. But hey, that's what gets us the fuel economy. Nonetheless, all in, off-road, the way the tuning works, on-road, the way it sounds, inside at least, pretty good. The way it sounds on the outside, Powertrain gets 4 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, we've talked about the F-150 interior many times. I've reviewed the truck quite a few other times. XLTs, Platinum, Limited. But relative to the Raptor here, this has quite a few things that are very unique to the Raptor. First of all, these leather seats here have a unique shape to them. They have unique upholstery. They have the Raptor logo embroidered into them, and they're very nice. Now, you can also step up and get an accent color package, which dresses them up quite a bit. Over here on the dash, you've got a carbon fiber look print here, down here on the console, over there on the trim, and over here on the door panels. And you could actually also option up an actual carbon fiber too if the fake stuff isn't quite your speed. Paddle shifters here, and these are magnesium paddle shifters, nice big ones. And as you saw when we were doing the rock crawling and getting into the drive a little bit, this instrument cluster is unique. You've got a number of different screens that really get detailed on the off-road status as well as your settings for that off-road. It's a nice big TFT screen in the middle and then conventional dials on the side. Steering wheel here, also unique as we talked about. It's got this red stripe here that lets you really get an idea of where your steering wheel's turned when you're out there really getting crazy. So when it comes to scoring this interior, it gets 4 out of 5 stars overall. The only low points being that there's some cheap plastics here and there, and the fit and finish could be a little bit better. And when you do get over those rough spots and roads, there does tend to be a lot of rattling here in the interior trims, and that is consistent with what we found in other F-150 trucks. And if you want more detail on the interior here, how these seats really work as well as the back seat, you can see some of our other F-150 reviews. Those are linked down below in the information section, and I really get into a deep explanation of what I think of those interiors. When it comes to rating the infotainment system here, this is the Sync 3 system, top of the line with navigation. I've always been impressed with it since Ford launched the Sync 3, and as I said, just with the interior, we have a lot more detail going on in some of our other F-150 reviews about this because we're mainly about off-roading here in this test. But this is an excellent system. As you can see, the graphics are very vivid. That camera lights up so well when you put it into the different modes and you actually start using it. You can see different views here, and you've got a front view here, you've got a rear view there that's sort of a complete wide angle. So it does give you a lot of options. And then of course you've got the 360-degree view, which lets you see all around the vehicle. Really helpful when you're backing out of spaces. It's an excellent system, and whether you get the Sony audio or you don't, the audio quality is actually pretty good, but the usability here, the connectivity, the features, everything is dynamite. This is a 5-star infotainment system. When it comes to talking about the quality here, this is overall a pretty well built vehicle. The only complaints I've had about the F-150 in the past have to do with the interior materials. Sometimes we've got exterior fit and finish issues, and the warranty coverage isn't really the best in the world. 336, 560. There's better truck coverage out there when it comes to warranty, so quality score comes in at 4 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, wrapping it up for the 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor. I gotta say, I had a lot of fun with this thing. I expected to, and I wasn't disappointed. And I gotta tell you, boys, at this price, you better not be disappointed, because that's a lot of freaking clams there. Now, granted, this starts out at just under $50,000. This has a lot of options on it. Even though it doesn't really look like it does, it actually looks rather plain to me, to be honest. Those stickers an option, these wheels an option, and inside and out, there's just a lot of other options that are part of packages here that, well, put 15 grand on top of the base price, basically. That's a lot. And so at $65,000, I put the value at 4 out of 5 stars, simply because there aren't very many things you can compare this to. In fact, there's virtually nothing, if we're quite honest. You can look at a Jeep Wrangler. That's not really a truck. You can look at a Ram Rebel, little downscale. You can look at a Chevrolet ZR2 in the Colorado, way downscale. They're all just a little bit different. So while this is a lot of money, where else are you gonna go? You know, that's kind of where it's at here. So when you put that in with everything else we've already talked about, we're at 4 stars for the review. Not bad at all. I'm Sam Hemart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride. Well, my friends, if you enjoyed the test drive you just saw, I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can do that by clicking on the big round logo right there. Also, I've got a full in-depth analysis on this powertrain, the engine, under the hood tour, talking about what makes it work, what makes it special, and how it makes all that power. That is right there on the big square. Either way, stay tuned.